Hey, I'm Transtastic, my name's Luke, and this week we're talking about legal transition. So obviously this is a very broad topic, and it varies a lot depending on where you are. If you're looking for information on how to legally change your gender or your name, the best place that you can go to is probably your births, deaths, and marriages, or equivalent service within the government. Every place you go to is different. Even in Australia, every state's different. What I say might not be the same for someone in Victoria, or someone in Kazakhstan, or wherever, you know. There have been a lot of videos about legal transition on the YouTube channel Transition Through the World, which is something that Chase started, like, probably 2 years ago. There are quite a few videos on there. Find your country and see if people have said anything about how they legally transitioned where you are. So that's a good resource too, so I'll link that down below as well. So for those of you who don't know, I grew up in Hong Kong, and my family is originally from Australia, in particular South Australia. I moved to Hong Kong when I was about a year old, but I was born in South Australia, so I have a South Australian birth certificate. So to change my legal gender on that, I had to go through the South Australian birth, deaths, and marriages. So there are two main parts to legally transitioning. First of which would be changing your name, and then changing your gender. Changing your name doesn't necessarily have to be a part of legal transition, but I'm including that as such because for me, in my experience, changing my name was very much a part of my transition. I changed my name when I was about 18 and a half. I put the paperwork in about September, and I got it back in about December of 2014, so the year I started T. It was very difficult for me because, as I mentioned before, my birth certificate is South Australian, but I was living in Victoria at the time, so because of that, I couldn't actually go in and fill in all the paperwork and get it all sorted. I had to post it in, which isn't too difficult, but it was very nerve-wracking because I was worried that it wasn't going to get there in time, and what if the money was wrong, or what if my card declined, or whatever. I was just a bit stressed about it. When it comes to changing your name, it's pretty straightforward, particularly if you're trans and you want to change your name because you don't identify with the name that you were given at birth. You pretty much just fill in the paperwork for your reason. You put down you don't identify with that name, you're trans, you've been living with your chosen name for however many months, years, whatever. My main hurdle when it came to that, with majority of my transition, was just being not old enough. I was 14, 15 when I realized I was trans and when I started going by the name Luke, but you have to be 18 in order to change your name without parental permission, and I didn't have parental permission to change my name. So I needed to wait until I was 18 before I could change my name. So that was probably the biggest hurdle for me. But once I turned 18, it was pretty straightforward. Put in the paperwork, found it all online, printed it off, filled it in. I need to get my documents cited, but I just went to a police station to do that. You just go there and just be like, hey, I need these documents cited, and then they checked it, stamped it, photocopied it for me, and then I just sent it all off. And then 2 months later, it came back with my birth certificate. The birth certificate I got, my name had been changed, my gender was still the same because I hadn't changed my gender at that time, and on the back it said change of name, and it had my history of my change of name. So that was kind of annoying because when I got my birth certificate, I was expecting to get a new birth certificate with no trace of my name. Anyway, that was rectified later when I changed my gender marker. Segue to changing my gender marker. I changed my gender marker actually really recently. I changed it this year because the process of changing a gender marker in South Australia was so difficult for the past 3 or 4 years. Originally, in order to change your gender marker in South Australia, you needed to complete 2 gender-confirming surgeries that were irreversible, I believe. One of those was testosterone, and the other could be another surgery. So it could be top surgery, could be hysterectomy, could be bottom surgery. You had to apply for a recognition certificate. So you had to fill in paperwork, pay like $100, and you also need to get 2 affidavits, one from a doctor and one from a psychologist or psychiatrist. It needs to be signed in the presence of a justice of the peace or a police officer, which is a bit difficult to arrange with your doctor, because if you're going to your doctor to, you know, have a checkup or get your levels tested or whatever, you can't really just be like, hey, let's go on down to the police station so you can sign my documents. So getting that information was very difficult and took a really long time. Then you would receive a court date. So you go to the court when you got your court date, and that was between 1 or 2 months later. Then you would go to court, and if the judge granted your recognition certificate, you would get your recognition certificate. And so depending on who the judge was, sometimes people were denied. It was really dodgy. I found it very difficult being in Victoria. I wasn't able to just pop down. Once you got your recognition certificate, this isn't legally changing your gender yet. This is just to get your recognition certificate. Then you would have to apply to birth, death, and marriages with all of your documents again, and your recognition certificate, and another $100 or so. And then you can get your birth certificate changed. So I got halfway through that process, and then I just gave up because all of my documentation had been changed previously, except for my birth certificate. Because in Australia, for pretty much all identification, except for your birth certificate, you can change it with just a letter from your doctor. So I got a letter from my doctor, and the letter from my doctor literally just said, this person has been under my care since blank, has been transitioning since blank, and identifies as blank. And then you can use that and take it to your bank, you can take it to Medicare, you can take it to Centrelink, wherever you need to take it. I even changed my passport to male without my birth certificate being male. It was totally fine. So I didn't actually even need to change my gender marker because all of my documentation was male anyway, so it didn't really matter. This year, they passed a bill in South Australia making changing your gender marker like 50 times easier. It basically voided the requirement of having these 2 irreversible gender procedures. So even if you're pre-T, you can change your gender marker in South Australia. You don't need to have any surgeries, you don't even need to be in T, you just go to state. You identify as this. Hey, this is editing Luke, because I forgot to actually mention, probably one of the coolest parts about this is that you can actually identify as non-binary on your birth certificate. I don't believe you can do that anywhere else. Birth certificate otherwise, but on your passport, you can have X as your gender. So you can have M, F, or X. I forgot to mention that, but that's really cool. Yeah, cool, bye. You need to get paperwork signed by your doctor, which is also signed under the presence of a justice of the peace or a police officer, but it's much easier than getting 2 affidavits, because this is literally just like, have you been seeing this person? Yes. What do they identify as? Male. Sign. So it's a lot easier, because what it was before was there was like this entire form that they had to fill out, and it was just really confusing, like with dates and when this person had surgery, and it was just very invasive, very long, took a very long time, and was a bit difficult for me to get my doctors and my care physicians to actually do. This was a lot easier. I basically gave her the paperwork and was like, hey, no rush, but when you're near a police station, can you just sign this in the presence of them and then get it back to me so I can put in my gender change. So I did that. I believe the fee was about $90, which, you know, isn't terrible. Like, it was worse when you had to pay double that for the recognition certificate, and the form was very much like the change of name. The old form was very confusing, had a lot of different things, and just no one really knew what was going on. I tried to contact them, and they didn't know what was going on, like, at the birthplace and marriages place. So now that it's all streamlined and much easier, I believe that the process is much easier, and it's much quicker as well. So I put the form in August, and I got it back in September. So it was pretty quick. It didn't take very long at all, and the best part was I actually got 2 birth certificates when I got my gender marker change. So the first one has my name, and my gender is male, and all of that, and it was totally fine. The second one had my name, gender, and along the back it had history of my change of name, so it had my old name, and on the date that I changed my name, and then it also had the date that I had my gender changed on my birth certificate as well. As all my information in case I need it, you know, like my change of name or anything like that, so if there are any issues, I've got that. But then I've also got a blank one that's got nothing on it, that has no trace of me being trans, there's no trace of my old name, no trace of my old gender, that I can take to if I need to take my birth certificate to an employer, if I need to take my birth certificate to wherever I need to take my birth certificate to. So that if I need to actually use my birth certificate, I don't need to worry about being outed. And as I mentioned, I am also from Hong Kong, and because of that, I'm a Hong Kong permanent resident, and so I have a Hong Kong permanent resident card. So this is my Hong Kong permanent resident card. I'm just covering up all of my information here. I need to carry this on me at all times, and it also means that I can just put it in and put my thumb on it, and I can get into Hong Kong just on my thumbprint, so I don't have to actually go through customs and have my passport stamped or anything like that, and I don't need a visa or anything like that, because this is my visa, basically. I changed my name on this beginning of 2015. This was actually the first document I changed, but I changed all of my Australian paperwork in February, changed this in January. The only thing, though, is if you look, it has an F there, and the Chinese character for female. This is the only documentation I have that is not male, and I can't change this until I've had lower surgery, which is really frustrating, because I have been caught out where I couldn't get back into the country because I didn't actually have my physical ID, because I still need to collect it, but I had to go back to Australia for uni. So when I came back to visit and I had a picture of it and was like, well, this is my number, I know my permanent resident card, I am a permanent resident, and then they checked back on the databases, my name had been changed, but my gender was female, but I was 6 months on T, I had facial hair, my voice was low. So the actual law on changing your permanent identity card is, and I quote, for female to male, removal of the uterus and ovaries and construction of a penis or some form of penis. Some form of penis. So you need to have a medical certificate basically saying that you've had bottom surgery. I don't really know how they actually confirm that, or whether or not you could just lie. I'm not advocating lying on your permanent resident card, but are they gonna drop your pants and see that you had the construction of some form of penis? I don't know. So that's the only thing I haven't done yet. So once I've had lower surgery, I'll sort that out, and that niggling F will finally be gone. But yeah, this is a good topic, and I hope that this topic helps people. I'm sorry that this is very specific to me, so if you're in South Australia, this really helps, and I guess if you're in Hong Kong, this kind of helps. But yeah, it's really difficult to talk about this topic broadly, because everywhere is different. If anyone has any questions about wider Australia, I have quite a firm grasp on the laws for Australia as well, so I'm more than happy to answer questions and assist if people are confused. I'll probably talk more in depth on Australian transition and legal transition in Australia on my personal channel, but if people are interested in that, let me know. Anyway, I've been talking for way too long. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.